Hello, and welcome to my studio. Once again, I have opened the window so you can peek on in and see what I'm up to. Currently, I create feelings out of fiber. That's what I do. Sometimes I digress and I make face masks, or I make fish and other things that I've shown here in these Facebook Lives or these videos. But primarily, I create feelings out of fiber, and I'm currently creating Enlightened. And so we're in this. I've passed the design phase. Last week, I think I was working on the design last week. I can't remember now. Anyway, I've got it all designed, and now it's under the machine, or under the sewing machine and under the needle. So we're going to stitch today. But before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about feeling enlightened, because in reality, enlightened and enlightenment isn't a feeling. It's actually a state of being. And I'd like you to consider for a moment that all feelings are actually states of being. They're not tangible, although I make them tangible and I make them visible with my art. But when we consider a feeling, whether it's enlightenment or connection or isolation or happiness or sadness or joy or grief or anything else, when we consider them to be states of being as opposed to just a feeling, it allows us to be more observant of what it is we're feeling rather than attached to it, because that's where we get stuck. When we get stuck when we attach ourselves to a particular feeling that's allowing us to feel, that causes us to wallow in the gray, or it allows us to, or it's something we're chasing, like we're pursuing happiness. All we want is to be happy. As a kid, that's what I wanted. When people asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up, I just said I wanted to be happy. And I was chasing happiness, and ultimately it's a choice, right? Happiness is a state of being. It's not really a feeling. You do feel it, certainly you do, because as humans, we're here to feel. And so I can feel enlightened, or I can feel happy, or I can feel sad. But the stuckness happens when we attach. And by attachment, I mean we think that the feeling is the be-all, end-all. We think that's all there is when we're feeling it. And really, there's so much more. We are so much more. We are much vaster than that. We are, pure, unlimited potential in an energetic form that happens to vibrate at a visible level. And just feelings are just part of that. That's how we kind of make this human experience feel real. But reality is that we're not in the reality. We're in the illusion. A lot of woo today, right? I'm very woo to begin with. I spend a lot of time in my head contemplating really abstract thoughts, which sort of spills out into my abstract artwork. But this morning I got smacked upside the head with a really giant dose of woo, in terms of how these feelings I create are really states of being in our own personal experience, and how we absorb them through our heart and through our bodies. So it caused me to consider the transformative experience of allowing ourselves to feel. And we often don't do that, particularly as women. We don't always let ourselves feel the feeling. We think, we've been trained and programmed from the time we were children that, whereas women, we're not supposed to get angry. As women, we're not supposed to be loud and brass and bold. We're supposed to be these sort of quieter and more demure creatures, which is fucking bullshit, honestly. And many of us have expanded beyond it, but there's still things I think if you were to look at your own individual personhood as a woman, I think you'd find that there are still ways when you allow that programming to be this more quiet, demure, ladylike person. There's nothing wrong with being ladylike, but is it really you? Is it something you've chosen, or is it something that's been put upon you by society, by family, by friends, by expectation? And so it becomes a matter of being true to you. And as part of being true to yourself, it means feeling what you feel. It means feeling all the feelings. It means sinking into it. Whether it's sinking into happiness or sinking into despair. Sink into it, feel it, absorb it, observe it, process it. Because when you can come out the other side of it, you're transformed every single time you feel. And the deeper the feeling or the stronger the feeling, the more it shifts, the more you settle into that state of being that feeling puts you into, or is, the more you can transform. And so that just made me stop to think that if you're having any issues feeling all the feelings or feeling whatever it is that you want to feel and you're not allowing yourself to do so, let me know and let's talk about it, because maybe there's some way I can help you transform out of that experience into something different and new. So anyway, I'll mention it here and I'll mention it at the end. If you want to be the first to see new work or to get updates from my studio, please join my email list. So drop a comment below or send me a DM with your email and I'll get you on the list so you can see all that stuff. Everything goes out on Mondays to my list, and they get to see, like I said, new work first. For now, we're going to just shift over to the stitching, and we'll sew for a little while, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about what being enlightened is. I'll talk about it in terms of this piece of work. So that's what we're going to do. Shift you to the sewing machine. I'll tilt the camera, and we'll get sewing away. Thanks. Try and get you. And as always, I'll probably end up with my hand in the way, because that's what I do. I don't mean to. There's no good way to do it. Maybe if I shift you there a little bit more. No, I don't like that. I want you to be able to see the machine. So anyway, I'll try and keep my hand out of it. I'm still working on pink fuchsia. If you follow me on Instagram or even just here on Facebook, because everything cross-posts over to here, you'll know that this week I was talking about my favorite colors, which are fuchsia and purple, and fuchsia is number 1. And so Enlightened here has a yellow canvas, and then it's got a lot of fuchsia on it, as well as a lot of purple. Partly because favorite colors, and partly because fuchsia and purple contrast nicely with the yellow. So, yeah, got a little thread I want to snip. Doesn't always bury my thread, this machine. So, anyway, I'm finishing up this batch of pink, and then we actually are shifting to another color. I got about 45 minutes worth of sewing done before I jumped on my live today, so we're just going to kind of keep going here. Anyway, let's talk about enlightenment a little bit as a state of being. I think as humans we tend to think of enlightenment as this place to get to, and like if you ever followed Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and the top level of that is self-actualization. It's one of the few things I remember from college. I don't even remember. I feel like I learned it in economics for some reason, which is really a weird place to learn it. I think I would have learned it in psych. But anyway, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the top level is self-actualization, and I think that's what we sort of think enlightenment to be, that it's this sort of place we're supposed to strive and get to, but the reality is that it's a state of being, and we can step into it anytime we want, as long as we're open to it. It's when we detach from and become observant of what's going on in our lives, around us, whatnot, and sort of step outside ourselves. And it's that state of flow. It's a place I get to quite often when I'm creating my art. I sit down, I can picture it in my head, this feeling I'm creating, it appears in my head almost fully formed in terms of color and general appearance, and then I sit there and I pull out color and fabric and I make it come to life. And that's this very state of, it's very much a flow state for me. It's what's often called the genius state, the guru zone. I like to call it the goddess on the mountaintop level, because that's just more fun. Because why shouldn't I be a goddess? Why shouldn't all women be goddesses? So that pink is done. So when I'm designing this, I'm actually in a state of enlightenment. I feel enlightened because I'm creating, which I just think is really kind of cool. I think it's a neat way to be. But anyway, this morning, like I said, it sort of struck me this morning that all feelings are ultimately states of being. They are these intangibles that I'm working to make visible. My art allows one to process and observe the feeling even more than as one feels it. Sort of that it provides that opportunity for that to really step into observation. It's harder to observe what we feel when we're in it, right? When we're sitting in it. But if you have a piece of art present, or you create your own art to make your own feeling tangible and visible, processing that feeling becomes a whole lot easier to do, because you're observing it. You're looking at, where is the next color? Sorry. When you can create your own feelings out of whatever you want to create, whether you want to paint, whether you want to draw, whether you want to do something similar to me and create them out of fiber, but whatever method you want to do it, baking, clay work, dance, song, whatever it is you want to do, you can create your own feelings and make them visible and tangible and allow you to better observe that particular feeling. So, for example, when I was making grief end of last year, into 2019, because it came up next on my rotation. It was like, I drew the outline and went, oh, okay, it's time to make grief. It allowed me to process it. I wasn't feeling any particular grief over any person, thing, place, anything in particular. It wasn't, well, maybe I was. I suppose I was to a degree. I hadn't really thought about it until just this moment. But there was a part of it that was probably grieving the end of my corporate career, which I chose earlier in 2019, to shift into my art making and working with others. And so I was probably sort of subconsciously processing my own grief for that sort of transition, that life changes of phases in life. But as I worked through the feeling and created it in fiber, it allowed me to process what grief feels like. It allowed me to kind of see it. And when I can see the feeling, it becomes much easier to understand how it impacts me and impacts others when I'm feeling it, when I'm in that state of being that is grief. This holds true for anything we feel. But anyway, I guess what I'm really trying to say is that it sort of struck me this morning is that I could potentially help others to process and transform themselves with their feelings by helping them to create their own feelings out of whatever medium they choose, so that the feeling becomes easier to feel and easier to process and easier to allow it to transform you, because our feelings are transformative. So I know I'm talking really woo today, and I'm okay with that. If you know me in real life, you know I'm kind of woo. Which I always thought was kind of funny. So working in the construction industry, it was like, oh no, you gotta be very very man-like and very, don't talk about your feelings, don't talk about, it's probably another reason I create feelings out of fiber. I couldn't, God forbid, as a woman in construction, you show your feelings. But my way to release them. But you didn't talk about the woo stuff too much either. I could with my girlfriends, but not so much with the guys I work with, because they didn't seem to, it just wasn't their bag. But this work I do now is really, it's transformed me. This process of creating feelings out of fiber has allowed me to really, really, really kind of get a better grasp on my own mental health. Because I do suffer from I do experience, I hate to use the word suffer, I do experience some depression. I've not been diagnosed, so I can't speak if it's clinical or not. I don't take any meds, which I sometimes think I should. And one of these days I will. I'll get out there and get myself back on something if it feels necessary. But maybe I won't either, because again, depression is just another state of being, and I don't have to be in that state if I choose not to. But anyway, it's because I have some depression. I worry. I guess it's anxiety. I don't know, but I tend to worry more than I ought to, which often can then trigger a depressive episode. And by creating feelings out of fiber, I've been able to transform my own experience with my own depression. I picture my depression as gray. It's just sort of gray feeling, gray mood, gray day, gray everything. Everything's gray. Words are gray. People are gray. The world is gray. And when I'm the opposite of that for me is fuchsia. Again, that favorite color comes into play. And when I can feel fuchsia as opposed to feeling gray, I know I'm not depressed, and I'm much more open to experience. I'm much more open to growth. I think things are easier to manifest and create. Just a better state. So it's much more the state of enlightenment, and that state of genius. We were goddess of the mountaintop again. The thing about enlightenment, as a feeling, as a state of being, however you want to approach it, is that in many cases it calls for you to be still. And silent and observant. And again, observant. And so again, the more we can sort of detach ourselves from our feelings, the more we can observe them and how they impact us. I'm not sure what else I have to say on that. Why don't I just sew? The stitching phase of my work is really meditative for me. It just allows me to let my mind wander. It's kind of when the woo thing hit me this morning as I was sewing away. Because again, whatever feeling I'm creating, I tend to be thinking about that feeling and again, processing it is what I do. So, and I don't know. I'm really kind of thinking out loud here today because I'm thinking, wouldn't that be amazing to help others process their feelings? I suppose, but through visual, through some sort of art form, some sort of creative endeavor. I stepped away from coaching because I don't really think it's that. I don't think it's coaching, but I'm pondering this. So we'll see. My leg. I won't do much stitching. I did a lot of talking today. So I'm going to finish this a little bit and it'll. If you're watching this now or later or whenever, live or in Memorex, let me date myself. I'm curious, share a comment. Would you be interested in creating your own feelings in some sort of creative art form? There's something there, I gotta play with it. Gotta pay attention to the things that come through. That's part of the state of enlightenment, is observing what comes through and then, depending on how it feels, taking action on it. When I was first, not when I was first creating, when I realized that my work was to create feelings out of fiber, God, that was definitely an enlightenment moment. Because it was like, it almost felt like somebody smacked me upside the head, but it also, there was a lot of light, there was a lot of like multi-moment type stuff going on with it. And I went, oh. And I've allowed myself to kind of digress away from it just in the last couple of weeks, really this last month, by creating the fish and creating the masks. Because really what I'm called to do here is to create feelings and make them visible. That's what I'm supposed to do. And maybe, just maybe, help others process their feelings too. So that's the bit I just stitched. I don't know if both of those paints really. Oh, look at the camera. Hard to see. There we go. Hard to tell when you need glasses to see. So, anyway, that's what I've got for you today. It's kind of a woo day. That's all right. When you work for yourself out of your home, doing work you love, you have a lot of time to think, and so it allows you to spend a lot of time processing and observing and stepping into that state of enlightenment. So I'm going to keep creating this piece, and I would ask you to go ponder your feelings as states of being as opposed to something to attach to. Right? Just observe them. See what happens. See how you can transform yourself by observing the feeling as opposed to attaching to it and clinging to it. You're not saran wrap. Don't cling to your feelings. Okay? So, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for peeking into the window. Until next week, have a wonderful, wonderful next 7 days. And stay safe, stay healthy. Peace and love. Bye-bye.